Hey everyone, Kelly Dean Allen here again. Today, going to show you guys how to play Gypsy Road by Tom Kiefer and Cinderella. Now, I feel sort of bad for these guys, as they pretty much got lumped in with all the other hair metal bands of the late 80s, and suffered the exact same fate as the rest of them when the whole hair metal scene went pear-shaped in the early 90s. That said, and despite that awful name, and the fact that they certainly played into that hair metal aesthetic of the time, Cinderella had a totally different sound from all of their hair metal contemporaries of the day. They had much more of a traditional blues-based rock sound, a lot closer to, say, classic Aerosmith than Rat or Poison and all the others. A style that should have, but didn't, help Kiefer and Cinderella maybe navigate through the demise of hair metal. Sadly, of course, like I said, that didn't happen. The band's popularity died with all the rest of them, as grunge destroyed pretty much all in its wake as the 90s got underway. Regardless, great track here in Gypsy Road, a popular cut from their second album, Long Cold Winter. Let's close in and learn how to play it, yeah? All right then, Gypsy Road, Tom Kiefer and Cinderella from Long Cold Winter, 1988, if I'm not mistaken. We are in standard tuning for this tutorial, and this track starts like this. Right, so this opening riff here is a little bit tricky to play. When I first figured this out, I'm like, that can't be right. They must be using open tuning or something, because this is a little bit awkward to play, and I figured that can't be right. So I looked up a couple of videos of the band playing it live, and sure enough, this is how it's played. The first half of it's not that bad. Right, that part right there. So it's all based around this B bar chord here. And we're going to start on the 4 of the A string with a little half-step bend release off to 2. And then we're going to drop onto this double stop here, which is kind of part of this B bar chord, right? On the 4s of the D and the G, and we're going to catch that on the upstroke. Then you're going to bounce back to the 2 and then back to the double stop again. Right? Not so difficult that. The second part is a little trickier. So we're going to go open A, 2, 4, and then roll down into that double stop, right? And catch it on the upstroke. And that's a little bit tricky, to catch that 4 on the downstroke and then immediately roll down to the double stops on the D and the G and catch that on the upstroke. And then you're back to the 2 and then back to the double stop again. And that's the riff. And you repeat that 4 times at the beginning of this track. And right at that point there, right when you roll down the 4th time, then we drop into the first verse with this. So open E, 2, 4, palm muted, and then we drop into A. Now there's 2 guitars going on here. One is just playing an A blues progression. Kind of like that, just bouncing off the 4 of the D, right? For 2 bars, and then back into the main riff. Right, and we stop there again and drop into the second half of the first verse. Right? While one guitar is doing that, another one is doing this. Catching a double stop here on the 5s. It's all still part of this A power chord, right? But octaves of those 2 notes, right? With your pinky on the 5s, catching that on the upstroke. Kind of like that. Bop, 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 bop. And then back into the main riff, right? And then we drop into the pre-chorus. So we're going to finish the riff this time, because we're not going off to E, right? The first two times we stop right on that double stop and then bum, 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 right? Leading into the pre-chorus, we're going to finish the riff. You're going to go back to that 2 and back to the double stop, right? And then we drop into D for the pre-chorus, just a blues progression, right? 1 bar, A, and then at 1 bar in A of that blues progression bouncing off the 4, then you're going to grab the 2 of the low E, little half step bend release right into an E major. And then catch the top 2 strings on the upstroke. Bum, 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 and you're going to repeat that, right? With that kind of rhythm. Bum, 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 before moving back into D. A. Bum, 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 back to D. Back to A. Now leading into the chorus, G. G flat. And then we're into the chorus, right? And that G to G flat, we're just riding those, right? Bum, 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 bum. And then we're into the chorus. So that's the chorus. We're kind of starting with the riff, right? Right to that point right there. And then we just move off to an E major, down to A, and then back to E major. Catching those strings on the upstroke, right? The top 2 strings. And then we're back into the main riff. Back to E major. Back to A. And at the very end of the chorus, we're going to do that little pull-off from the 2nd fret off to the E major. And then catch the top 2 strings on the upstroke and let them ring. So that's the chorus. A. Right? And then we're back into the main riff for 2 more repeats before dropping into the 2nd verse. Bum, 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 bum. G flat or F sharp, 2nd chorus. Right, back into the main riff 2 more times before the bridge. Now, the bridge, we're going to move into C sharp. So that's the bridge right there. C sharp power chord, little down, up, down, right? And then we're going to go 6, 7, and then off to an A power chord. Then into an E power chord. Back that up to 6, back onto 7. And then resolve it to a B power chord, right? Repeat. And then leading into the solo, we're just going to drop into B and ride that for 2 bars, right? And then we're into the solo. So the solo. So that's pretty much the solo right there. So we're soloing over D to A to E. Right, that right there. And we're changing the scale as we go, following those chords, right? And we're just using the blues scale. So we start in D with that right there. Classic little blues lick, barring the 10th fret of the B and the high E, bending the 12, double hits on that double stop, right? Repeat that 3 times. And then the band shifts into A, and we shift into A as well. With that little lick right there. Double stop on the 7 of the G, 10 of the B, 8 of the B. Gonna give that a little bend. Drop off to the 5 of the G, which is the minor third. Then we're gonna hammer on to the major third at the 6 after a double hit. And then finish on the 7 of the D. Right, and that's the opening of the solo. And then we're into this, shifting into E. So double stop again, this time on the 2nd fret of the B and the high E. Little bend release off to open, very staccato. And the 3rd time, you're going to repeat that 3 times, and the 3rd time you're going to give that a double hit. And then you're finally going to grab the 2 of the G, little bend release off to open, finish on the 2 of the D. So you're kind of choking those off at the top, those little half-step bends that you're doing on this double stop, right? And then catching the open strings. Right, and that's the first half of the solo. Second half of the solo, we're going back into D. That quick little blues lick there. So again, back in this position, little bar on the 10s of the B and the high E, starting with a bend on the 12 of the G. Going to skip over the B string, go right down to the 10 of the high E, and then pull off 13 off to 10 of the B. Right? And you're going to repeat that, but the second time you're not going to skip over the B string. Kind of like that, right? And then you're going to do that pull off from 13 to 10 again. And then drop right back on 13 into a full step bend. Right? And now we're back into A for that little lick there. Again, starting minor third to major third, 5 onto 6, drop onto the 7 of the D, and then you're going to string skip down to the 8 of the B, and then just kind of reverse it. Right, and finish with a hammer on 5 to 6. He may be hitting a double stop here. I think he is. So he's barring the 5th fret, right? And then hammering onto 6. Kind of like that. Right? So every time he hits that 5, he's also hitting the 5 of the B. Kind of like that. And then the end of the solo, again, more double stop work. We're back in E again, this time on the 2s of the G and the B. Little bend releases off to open twice, right? And then finally open G, drop onto the 2 of the D. And then finish the solo with that. Open G onto the 2, back off to open. Drop onto the 4 of the D. And then at the very end of the solo, full step bend of that 2. And give it some vibrato. So that is the solo, nice and slow. And that's the solo, and then we drop back into the main riff again with a slight variation. We're playing it a little bit quieter, and we're kind of arpeggiating notes out of the riff. Right, kind of like that. We're going to repeat that like 6 to 8 times. I'm not exactly sure how many times, but we're going to doing that little bend release off to 2, right? And then instead of catching that double stop on the upstroke this time, we're just going to ride down those 2 notes on the 4s. Right? And then off to E. Bend release of that 2 off to E. And then you're going to catch the 2nd fret of the D and then the open B. And then we drop into A, Drop onto that 4, back off to the A, right? Nice and quiet, and then move up to E, do the same thing. Drop onto the 4, back off to the 2, and then repeat. And like I said, you repeat that a number of times, and then we drop back into another chorus. And leading into the final chorus, we kind of ride an E, right, for 2 bars. So kind of like this. The final time playing through this, right? Now coming off that A, we drop into E and just ride that. Maybe even for 4 bars, right? Then we drop back into the chorus. Right? And that just continues until fade out. And that, my friends, is how you play Gypsy Road by Cinderella and Tom Kiefer. Certainly hope you enjoyed the video, found it helpful. And if you did, please hit that like button right down there. Maybe drop me a subscribe if you haven't done that already, as that would be very kind and helpful to the growth of my little channel. Hope you're well out there in your little guitar corner of the world, wherever that may find you. And we will see you next time. Cheers.